From the heartland of America and coast to coast, this is EM Student with Professor Dan Scott.
The winner knows how much he still has to learn, even if he is considered an expert by others. A loser wants to be considered an expert by others before he has learned enough to know how little he knows. Sydney Harris. Good morning. My name is Dan Scott, and welcome to EM Students. Today, we have a great subject to discuss. It is education versus experience. And I have on one of the most inspirational people that I've come to meet over the last couple of years. Dr. Carol Seaway is an associate professor in the Department of Emergency Management at North Dakota State University. She is a lawyer and a PhD in emergency management. In addition to her teaching, research, and service obligations, Dr. Seaway serves the internship coordinator and the administrator of the Blanchard Award. She also serves as the faculty liaison to the Veteran Alliance organization. She is currently engaged in the FEMA's National Emergency Management Executive Academy, which is where I've met her, in the FEMA's Higher Education Program and our Ethics SIG. And the International Association of Emergency Managers Training Education Committee, and the Critical Infrastructure and Business Continuity Caucus, and the FEMA EMI Planning Practitioner Program course development. Over the years, she has been active in many emergency management initiatives to include the Higher Education Program Survey, the Body of Knowledge Survey, the Principles of Emergency Management, Curriculum Outcomes, and the Next Generation Curriculum Competencies, the Training and Education Synergy Group, and multiple FEMA EMI course developments. Dr. Seaway is a subject matter expert on matters relating to emergency management, higher education program development, emergency management identity, and emergency management professionalization and work frequency in local, state, and federal agencies on projects of importance of emergency management community. Her primary area of academic interest is research and writing involved in emergency management identity. I'm sorry, I misspoke there. She also works regularly with local businesses, colleges, governments, and other community partners to create stronger preparedness and response in infrastructure and capabilities. She shepherded both the hazard mitigation and comprehensive emergency management planning efforts at North Dakota State University under federal grant awards. Dr. Seaway has been honored by the International Association of Emergency Managers individually or as part of a team with the student advisor, the student chapter advisory of the Year Award 2015. I'm sorry, Dr. Seaway. Let's bring her on because I'm screwing up her bio and she can do better than I can. She's got so many things that she's done for the industry. She continues to do for the industry. Good morning, Dr. Seaway.
Good morning. If I knew you were going to read all those things, Dan, I would have just given you just my name. That would have been enough.
Well, I tell you what, I was gonna do a brief bio, but I said you've done so much. I want to share that with the listeners, because I have to share this as well. In our executive academy where I met you, the only person I've ever heard, and I've shared this multiple times, say that they wanted to be an emergency manager when they grew up, credited that to you. And that it to me was one of the most impressive things I could hear, especially since we are trying to make the next generation of emergency managers grow up to want to be emergency managers and enter the field as an emergency manager versus retire and then come in as a second career or other duties as assigned. And for you to be that individual's inspiration is inspirational to me. So I wanted to share all that because that in turn is one of the reasons why you inspired other individuals to come into our profession. So and then overall today the topic of experience versus education and it's an ongoing debate and you have done a great job on clarifying that topic, on why both are important and why we should have open minds when it comes down to it. So, good morning.
Good morning, and thank you. All those compliments. I'm like, oh, can we just stand here all day and you can just keep complimenting me? This is the way every morning should start, Dan.
You're right.
At any rate, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so delighted to be with you today, and I'm delighted to be in a place where I can talk to students, because I think that you have noted that this is the future, right? We're looking at what the rest of our workforce is going to look like in 20 to 30 years. They're going to be shaped by what I would say is a multi-layered learning model, which starts with ultimately education, but which includes on-the-job experience, right? Training, and then professional development. So that's really what I want to talk about today, if I could, with students, is recognizing where education fits as it relates to experience. And let me give you some of the history in this space. So the higher education program, when it started, basically started with the notion that by creating a cadre of educated emergency managers, they would have a chance at reducing or leveling off the disaster costs that we were experiencing. This is 1990s. This is quite a ways, to 94, I believe it was, when the high ed program started. So this is quite a long time ago. So Wayne Blanchard, who was the director at the time, went about getting programs developed. So that, as part of that project, Wayne Blanchard, to justify it, created a list of characteristics that were the old stereotype emergency manager and the kind of next generation emergency manager, the new emergency manager. And I'm not going to give you those today, but I'm going to tell you that the old emergency manager characteristics were not all that flattering, and the new ones were like, wow, so sparkly and dazzling. So it didn't come off as kind. It's not that it wasn't true, right? When you say that these people entered emergency management without a degree, that they're focused on response, not all phases, this was the truth. But it wasn't flattering. So that was point one. So of course, if you're in the field and you have experience, you've been working and doing the actual job for many years, and you hear this, you're like, well, education. Well, let me just tell you a little bit thing about how important experience is. So that ruffled some feathers. So we start in that space. And then what happened with IEM is they have a CEM certification. They decided that they would require a degree for the certification. And I believe that was in an homage to understanding that professionalization will ultimately require that we have a degree component. So it was well intended again, and it was received lukewarm for a while, because there was a grandfathering until 2010. So while there was a grandfathering, everybody's like, we don't love it, but okay. Because a lot of EMs did not have a degree. And it wasn't a specific emergency management degree you need. It was any degree. But let's be clear. You did not need a 4-year degree to get into emergency management at that time. And still even today, you do not. That's not a requirement. So it was really a big step up in the field for them to have to be thinking about that. So, but after 2010, when it came in and they said, no more grandfathering, you have to have the 4-year degree, it kind of made a us-them proposition. And the notion that, you were either on the education side or you were on the experience side. So here is what I am here to say. It's not an either or proposition. It never was an either or proposition. We need to clear that up. The reality is that education gives you very specific things. It doesn't mean that as soon as you're done with your degree, you are ready to be the head of a giant agency. This is part one of your journey. Part one will be education. And then you will go on to a job where you will learn additional things. You will go into training to even further drill down what you know. And then through your career, you will focus on professional development because you will continually be growing. And what I just gave you there is pretty much the multi-layered learning model. So I'll illustrate it with my very limited illustration skills, which is a triangle. And I have to choose these things because these things just are based on whatever skills you have. So a triangle I can draw, and at the bottom of that triangle would be education. And what do we know about education? Well, we know that most degree programs have a very limited amount of credits that are in the actual major. If you have a 4-year degree that's 120 credits, you're not getting 120 credits of emergency management, right? You're getting a very limited number of degree of credits concentrated in your degree area, in your major. So that's where we'll start. You're getting this level of concentration. Across programs, what's in that concentration can vary dramatically, and it's going to depend on who the faculty are, right? And one of the things about emergency management, if you're teaching in the field or learning in the education space, what you'll find is that the books, some books are great, some books aren't. Some faculty are using articles instead. Some faculty are doing more hands-on. So the variety, when you go from institution to institution, is pretty dramatic. So what we know now is, okay, not tons of credit. We're not exactly sure where the focus is going to be or how those classes are going to be taught. That's not standardized anywhere. So you're going to come out of that program with a basic understanding, hopefully, of some things. For sure, hazards or impacts, the way we operate within our system, a political system that is a challenge sometimes, the socioeconomic factors that are relevant to emergency management. There's some key things you're going to come out of a degree program with, hopefully understanding all the places where you can use your skill sets that you've learned in your higher education program, or at least talked about, and will further hone as you go on. So this high ed piece definitely gives you the grounding to understand many things. And if you're lucky enough to have an internship requirement, then you've actually got to get some boots on the ground experience as well. But beyond that, that's all it's doing. That's it. You're not sitting in an office somewhere. You're not working with teams out there that are not in a school setting where you're graded, because teams in a graded situation, and even though you may complain, let me tell you, they're different, right? Having people who are all focused on getting that grade that the professor has framed for you is different than working in a community or with an organization that requires you to collaborate when all of these folks could have very different agendas for what they're trying to accomplish, other challenges that they need to be attending to besides what you're asking them to do. So it's a very different experience than your group working class. So I'll take a breath there and ask Dan if he wants to get in, because I could go for hours without taking a breath. So
no,
Dan,
I think you definitely, you nailed it, because with myself, if we just use me as an example, and I've had these conversations with many people over the years at EMI, at CDP, and then just in general practice at conferences. When I entered the field, I didn't have an education, and I didn't, honestly, at the time, I didn't feel like I needed one. I was going to learn on the job. I was going to do what I needed to do, and I did for a certain amount of time. And then I came across EMI, and I hadn't known about EMI until I started really getting into some certain things that I needed to develop to make sure that the program I was building was a quality program. And when I went to EMI, I got introduced to so much. I was going to CDP for years because I was a first responder. I started as a first responder and then transitioned to safety and compliance, emergency management, and preparedness. And it was just that I had these conversations. I didn't have an education, but what an education brought me when I decided, I'm going to go back to school, was it brought me thinking about things in different ways as an emergency manager. And that's one of the things that I get into when I have conversations with experienced versus education, or those who said, I don't need an education, That's really what it does. And and there's so many different parts of having an education, right? There's certificates, there's an associate, there's a bachelor's, there's a master, there's a doctorate. And as you mentioned already, IEM does not require a specific degree to get your CEM. So there's so many. I got a degree in emergency management, then I got one in social welfare, then I got one in leadership and organizational development, all different. But I applied each one of them to emergency management and what I was doing. And that's what's important and you've said that too, a lifelong learner. And not every one of them are. And I think when you get those stereotypes to say, well, I'm an emergency manager, I don't need to know education, I don't need to go to these classes. That's where we start failing the system and we start failing the community. But you're absolutely right. The stereotype is what gets you. But as far as education goes, there's so many parts of the education aspect, but it's the open mind going into it that really makes you a great student.
Well, I would absolutely concur with that. And here's the thing. Let me be really clear to every single practitioner who might see this, who does not have a degree. I am in emergency management and my heart is with the practitioner community. Not that I don't love my scholarly friends, but here's what I recognized when I started emergency management. The complexities of our world, they make the position so difficult just based on all these nuances, not only of who you have to partner with, but all of the things that can happen within a system that could be disruptive. And what you have is one emergency manager, typically at a jurisdiction, hopefully full-time, hopefully, and that person is given a limited budget, many things to do, far more to do than can be done, and they're in an environment that was never going to be helpful for their success. It was only going to allow them to maybe survive for another day in this space. And that is not what we want for these professionals. That is what brought me to EM, the understanding some of the challenges that we were facing in practice and that we weren't getting the respect, the resources, and having frankly, the power we needed to do the things we need to do. And you'll see that across so many events still, that we don't have the power. So I want to make it clear that I don't think anyone who doesn't have a degree right now needs to run back and get a degree. But you do need to keep learning. I agree 100% on that, Dan. We need to always learn. So if you're already beyond that and you're like, I'm 40 or 50 and I'm not going back to get my undergrad degree, amen. Why would you? Who has time for that? Here's what you do. You mentioned two places that I love, EMI and CDP. EMI in particular has a structure that you can use to grow throughout your career. What is the challenge if you're in practice in that space? The challenge is getting away. That's the number one challenge, right? Can you get away to EMI? But once you get to EMI, the ability to learn and engage and continue a dialogue about a variety of topics is ever present. It doesn't have to be in the classroom. It can be in the pub. Not that I'm promoting drinking, students, but what I'm saying is that there's a network there. One of the things that is limiting about experience is that we only experience what we get in our jurisdiction, right? In the organization we're in the dynamics or the culture within which we work. One of the things about education that gives us coverage there is we can cover a lot of different things in those spaces. We can at least give you an awareness in those spaces of some of the things that are happening, or you can know more about hazards you would not be exposed to in your jurisdiction that you may be exposed to at a later time, or as a practitioner, you may be, as part of EMAC, going out to help someone else in another type of event. So that's one of the things education does. But if you're already on your way, no, you don't need to come back. I am not the one telling you need to come back. You should want to continue to learn. Dan mentioned certificates. Those are a great way to engage with current material. And there's so many offerings and varying lengths and the way it's delivered. And there's just no reason you wouldn't do that. But if you're like, I don't want to spend that money. If you're a practitioner, here's what you do. You go to EMI because that is funded. And EMI, when you are accepted in one of those courses, You get to stay on the campus, which, I think is great. I mean, we're not going to talk about that part today, but I mean, it's free lodging, and they have a dining hall, and they have every amenity you could want. The EMPP program, the Emergency Management Professional Program, is something you should be keeping your eye on as a student and as a practitioner as you go through your career. So starting with the basic, that is for new to EM folks. Sometimes people who haven't had the benefit of doing education will still go through that program just to kind of understand what the base is for the future program. So you'll have the Basic Academy, and that is an incredible academy, and they cover tremendous amount of information. And if you are a student, you think, well, I have a degree, I don't need to go to the Basic Academy. That is the wrong assumption. First of all, I don't care, and I do mean that like in the sarcastic, obnoxious way I said it. I don't care if you think you know everything. You don't know everyone and the responsibilities and the way they come to the material. At the very least, when you go to the Basic Academy, even if you think I know that material, here's what's going to happen at the Basic Academy. You're going to meet a cadre of instructors with a wealth of practical experience that you do not have. You're also going to meet a lot of other people from places all over the country who are engaging in the Basic Academy, who are going to share their experiences, and you're going to have dialogues as a group that are going to increase your knowledge, change the way you think about things. That's why you go. I don't care if you think you know everything. You go for those other reasons, and then I promise you're going to find, oh, you didn't know everything. So that's what you would do with the basic. Once you're done with that and you've had some time in the job, then you could move on to the Advanced Academy, which is focused on leadership. And I think, has Kelly been on your show before? He's been on Todd's, he's been on somebody's. Yes. So, I mean, this is where you'd be focused on leadership, and then you would get in other discussions. And I will tell you, because I sit with the Executive Academy, which is the final academy, that it is the power of having members of our community in the room together, which doesn't happen often enough. One of the phenomenons that doesn't happen with emergency management, because we're so busy and we're not staffed with the same level of depth as some other fields that are professionalizing, is that we don't get out to be around each other enough. We don't get enough of that support. And when you're in the space with colleagues like that, the dialogue and the kind of confirmation of the importance of the work you do, it's all there in that space. It invigorates you. So you go into that space and you have these dialogues and you come out bigger, better. Bigger is maybe not the right word, although the food sometimes, I don't know. But you come out of that experience as a stronger emergency management professional. And that's what we're looking for with those academies. It's not just about the content. And in fact, as you move up the academies, it has less to do with the content and more to do with the people in the room. So as Dan mentioned, I met him in the Executive Academy. Dan is doing scholarly work. I am doing scholarly work. We've both been to the Executive Academy. I was in the Executive Academy. I was cohort 4. And Dan, what cohort were you?
7.
So there's a place for scholars in there. And I will tell you, the people that I engaged with in my time in the Executive Academy are very close to me. And I now work with the Executive Academy. And so I know a lot more of those folks. But these are people dedicated to improving themselves and improving emergency management, the field and the profession as we're professionalizing. They are putting the time in to change the face of emergency management, to bring the power, the stature, the resources, the brain power that's required to really push forward initiatives from our community. So those are great. That's a great opportunity, whether you're new, whether you're already in, you don't want to go back and do education. I think that we often think of EMI as only like basic, very narrow training lanes, but EMI has so many opportunities, expansive opportunities. The EMPP is one obvious one, but they also have the Master Exercise Practitioner Program. They have a number of programs. They have a PIO series, which is incredible, top notch. You will not be able to get anything like that in an institution. The PIO series that they have, which they have integrated into part of it into the basic academy as well. I mean, you have to look at that catalog and consider, and that's going to be no matter where you're at, no matter where you are, whether you came in with no degree and you've been working for 25, 30 years, still look at the catalog. If you are a brand new student and you're just graduating, you're like, okay, I'm just getting my first job, look at the catalog. You need to go to basic and then look and see what else you're doing in your position that could be benefited by EMI. But just remember, this is not, oh, okay, we're done with the degree. Whew, thank goodness, let's get back to paying those student loans and let's just move on. So
that's the biggest aspect of it is well, it's the desire too. As the practitioner or as the educator or as the student, it's the desire to keep going. But what that desire does, it drives you to make things better. And one of the reasons why I keep doing what I'm doing is because I want to make this a great profession, not just a trade. Okay, there's trades and there's professions, and I want this to be a great profession. And as you mentioned earlier, as far as it goes, it can be other duties as assigned. It can be a one-person shop. It can be a part-time position, and then having the time to be able to get away. But it's the mindset of the individual in the job, as well as the mindset of those who are responsible for making sure those positions exist, and making sure that they're staffed, and making sure that the programs grow, and making sure that they're funded. But there's no overarching thing. Not even our government can say you have to have this. And that's one of the, I want to educate those at the highest levels to say, this is why it's important. This is why they need to exist. This is why the funding needs to be there. And this is why it needs to be continual professional development built into the profession. Most great professions across the world require continual professional development. So you're always on top of the latest technology, the latest skills, and the latest knowledge and new developments within the profession. And that's what I want for emergency management. And and EMI is a great place to start that. And mentoring in general we have to have more mentoring when it comes to emergency management. Even first response, there needs to be some more mentoring. But emergency management, there's very little mentoring that's done. And those who have the knowledge to pass that on about CDP and EMI and New Mexico Tech and the Las Vegas Rad School. These are things that people don't go out and say, hey, if you heard of this, you should go look at this. This can increase your skills. This might broaden your knowledge. This might lead you to what you want to do with your profession. I started out as an emergency manager, or a first responder, and was going to lead into, I was going to be a fireman, and my direction went this way because I found a different passion to do and it's so encompassing. You get to work. I mean, I worked in higher education, and so I was fire, I was EMS, I was law enforcement. So I was all of those, and it led me to emergency management because I get to work with all those still, and it's such a broad range. But also more than that, there's so many different aspects of emergency management. You can't touch them all in your career to be really good at them. And one other program I'd like to mention, especially right now with what's going on at EMI, is their continuity of operations certificate. They got multiple courses you can take to build up to this continuity of operations specialist. And right now that's huge because that's what everybody really needs, continuity of operations, because everything's shut down. What if it happens again? And there's still plans that need to be developed in case of, what the future brings. So that's a great program as well.
Well, absolutely. And let me just speak to a couple of things that you triggered in me in a positive way. First of all, emergency management folks are people of heart. They have this desire to serve. And that's one thing that we see across the emergency management community. Emergency management folks aren't coming here to be Tommy Lee Jones. They're not like, I'm here, I've arrived. It's not that. It's to contribute. It's for service. That is an element that runs through all emergency management folks. So I want to note that you will see that people are drawn to emergency management, and that's very true of our existing community. So most folks never saw emergency management as a career first choice until we started until the high ed program got going, and we started high ed programs offerings across the across the United States. So nobody really thought of it like that. They came to it to help, to serve. So that's where we are. That's who we are. That's part of our identity. This emergency management deals with high consequence risk. Okay, let's talk about professions that deal with high consequence risk. And when I say professions, I mean professions, because everyone else who deals with high consequence risk is deemed a profession. And what does that mean? That means that they have monopoly, autonomy, and authority, and they control this. They have pretty much said, this is our area of subject matter expertise. We know the knowledge, we control entry, we have very clear, determined categories of what you have to do to get in, what you need to do to continue practice, what your behavior needs to be, what your ethical code needs to be, all of those things. That is what it takes to be in a profession, and a profession controls that. However, let's medical folks, they take care of your body, right? Legal folks, they take care of your rights, your freedoms. What do we cover? Oh, I don't know, just people's lives, their property, the environment, the stability of communities, of government, business organizations, you name it.
Livelihood.
Yes, we have the most complex risk portfolio of any field. And yet, we do not have the power or the stature that we need attributed to us as a profession. So Dan, you're right. One of the things that happens as we gather and we continue our professional development is we push the dialogue in this space for what we need. And as we push the dialogue, we shape what we believe emergency management needs to look like to be as successful as it can be. And that requires money. That requires trust in your emergency management professionals in your community, your state level, your federal level. That's what it requires. It doesn't require you supplanting their knowledge with your own. You have to say, look, I'm not the expert. The emergency management professional is the expert. They've gone to school. They've been in the trenches. They've done the training. They've been going through professional development. This is what they focus on every day. Those are the people we need to talk to. So that's where we need to be, and that's where we're moving toward, right? And that's what EMI and all of these programs that we're working in to kind of further development are looking to do. We're a community that is doing difficult work, complex work every day, even on the days or we're sitting there in meetings all day working on plans or talking about, who's going to do what in the next exercise. That may seem mundane to the outside person viewing what's happening, but the reality of that is this is a very intricate structure that is protecting a large group of people. And as you mentioned, Dan, livelihoods, it's essentially everything. It's every piece of people's lives are touched by our ability to create a sustainable community. Everything is touched by that. So we're the biggest risk management group and the least funded, the lowest funded. So
least funded, least staffed.
Yeah.
Funding brings resources, and people are part of those resources. And you're absolutely right. And that's a big thing with me as well. Is like, how do we get that message to those who are implementing that funding and implementing those positions, and trust that the people that they're putting in those positions are doing the right thing. As you said, our ability to reach our community, or lack of our ability to reach our communities, based on what we're allowed to do, and the open-mindedness of those that are that are, as you said, we don't have authority. We're usually like third, fourth removed from those who do. So it's harder for us to influence those people and really make them understand what the importance of it is, because we're so far removed from the decision makers of an organization or a government. And it's hard to continue to build forward without those people to understand that they make the decisions, they implement the budgets, they assign those departments. And what I see the most, and this really hurts us as well, is they're 4 or 5 removed, but they're in a police department, or they're in a fire department, or they don't have their own department, or they have their own department, and someone comes in and says they shouldn't have their own department. They put them over here. They're so juggled, and they need to be, like FEMA's a great example, but FEMA's not an authority. They really can't tell us what to do. They can attach money to it that says, if you don't get the money. And if you do get the money and you haven't done these things, then we can take that money back. But they can't say you have to do it this way, and these are why. They say they tie money to it. And it would be nice for there to be a body that says, this is why it's important. This is what we're doing. We're going to make it mandatory. There are laws that said the highest person within a jurisdiction is in charge of emergency management. Mayors and city managers, well, they don't know anything about emergency management, but they're tasked with it because of state law or federal law. So these are all things we got to overcome in the profession. And those that are coming up, being educated and having the experience to say this is the best way to do it, are going to be the ones that make that transition. I would love to say I see that happen in my lifetime. That like as you said, we are a profession, and we are one of the highest risk. We're a risk management driven profession. So
let me just say something how that can happen, because you mentioned something earlier about mentoring, and I do see the structure by which this could happen. First of all, higher education should be telling their folks, hey, guess what? You're change agents. What you're going into is not what it looks like. It's not what it needs to look like. You have work to do. You are tasked with this work, and the work you're tasked with is getting us to the place where our voices are trusted, and they're coming to us first, that they are looking to our subject matter expertise. So that's our side of the high ed side. But we need seasoned practitioners. We need those people with decades of experience to say the mission is to have these younger folks coming out of education to be that are ready to be change agents, to work with us to understand historically what we know, where the roadblocks are, ways to get around those roadblocks, because we all know how to get around those roadblocks. If you're practicing, you know there may be a cost, but you know how to get around the roadblocks. So there are spaces where additional learning has to happen in the mentoring piece. And I would say to every single student, and I would also say this to seasoned professionals, there is always someone to learn from. And you just need to find that person and ask, because I have never, ever met someone in emergency management. If you ask, could I talk to you about this? Can I get your input on this? Can you give me some guidance? Never has someone said to me, no. Never has someone said to one of my students, no, because we're a caring community. We come to this community as servants. We want to serve. So of course, we want to bring other people up to be successful. That is part of who our community is. And I think that we think, oh, I shouldn't ask. Look like I don't know. I don't know something. I have news for you. I have an emergency management PhD. I have the first one in the world. And that doesn't mean I'm super old. I just want to qualify that. But I have the first one in the world. I don't know everything. In fact, I just know so much. I will always ask and will always seek to learn more from people who know more, who had experiences I haven't had, who've accumulated knowledge that I haven't had the opportunity to accumulate. This is critically important. So the mentorship between new emergency managers and seasoned emergency managers has to be a dedicated focus, because that will help us accomplish the missions we have going forward. The seasoned information with the new challenge to be change agents, those two pieces together, that is part of the solution. And Dan, we may not see it in my lifetime, but we probably will see it in yours. That's what I'm hoping for.
I hope so too. And on that note, it's about the active willingness to go out and surround yourself with those people and ask for that help. I mean, I've asked you for help. I've asked so many different people, and these are people that I still look to today and will look to for years and years and years to come. And as I continue through my career and as I continue through my education as well, and without taking that step and showing humility to say, hey, I don't know it all, and I never will.
Mm-hmm.
But there are people out here who know certain areas very well, better than me, that I can surround myself with and make myself better. So as we wrap up, I want to give you a chance to talk about your degree programs that you offer through North Dakota State University. So can you give us a quick pitch? Where do they find you? What programs do you offer? And when you're done, stick around. We can talk real quick after we go offline.
Okay. So North Dakota State University has a bachelor's, master's, and PhD in emergency management. Face-to-face primarily. And I say primarily because right now, we're kind of doing a thing called a pandemic. So we are virtual, and we do have students who have jumped on that opportunity to kind of jump into some of our classes during this time. But face-to-face primarily, we are a very hands-on program. And at the batch, and you can also get a minor. So if you are getting some other degree at NDSU, you can pick up our minor. But we're very hands-on. We require an internship, and that internship requirement is very specific. It's not just here's the list of our regular internships, and you go do this one of these things checked on the box and do some random list of things. That is not what it is. So I want to just spend the rest of my couple of minutes talking about this. If you want more information about NDSU, just shoot me an email. I'm happy to give you anything you want to know. But I want to talk about internships because this applies to everyone everywhere. We require an internship. All programs should require an internship. They may not, because it's very time intensive. I'm the internship coordinator, so I can tell you that is a truth. That is very time intensive. An internship should meet you where you want to go in your career, at least where you know you want to go to start. So you shouldn't be doing an internship at the local university if you want to work in a hospital. I want to put you in an internship where you can experience that and build a network in that space. That's what I want to put you in an internship for. That's the way I want every student to approach internships. And you know how you do that? If your program isn't supporting you, you can look on the job services or whatever, which is what many people do. But the better way is just to reach out to somebody who's doing the job you would like to do in your future and say, hey, can you help me? Can you give me some guidance in this space about where I could go? Do you ever allow internships or even job shadowing or something like that? Can we have a cup of coffee, virtual or otherwise? Mostly it's virtual now, but that's what I really want to encourage people to do. You may not want to come to Fargo. I'm okay with that. We recognize Fargo it's got its own little thing going, but at the very least, no matter where you go, make sure you do an internship and you connect with the practitioner community in ways that you can continue your learning in that space, because that must happen. You do no one any good if you go out with your degree thinking you know it all and you're ready to save the world. You aren't. You need to get connected with the practitioner community and continue to grow. Okay, amen, hallelujah. That's all I have to say about that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Seaway. If you're not fired up right now, you should be. But this talking to you is always inspirational. It always gives me more passion to do what I do. And just thank you very much for taking your time today to come on the show. As I tell everybody, your time is the most important thing you can give. And thank you for sharing some of it with me today.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. So as we wrap up, as Dr. Seaway said, an internship is great. If you can't get an internship, find a way to volunteer. Volunteer your time. Learn from an industry that you want to be a part of. There are so many volunteer opportunities out there that you could take advantage of. It doesn't necessarily have to be an intern. Some places do not have internships, but they may have a volunteer program. So take a look at those. If you're not walking away from today's episode passionate and fired up, I don't know what else to get you fired up. Just so let me say thank you very much for listening. As we see you next time, this is Dan Scott.